Miles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants. And we're starting the new year with talking about bare root fruit trees. And we're here in front of a Home Depot, as you can see here behind me. And I have this product, which they also carry here. You can find it on homedepot.com, is Ivory Organic. It's a 3-in-1 plant card where you just add water. It's protection against damaging sunburn and insects and rodents for uses on your roses, fruit and nut trees, ornamental trees and shrubs. And it's a non-toxic, environmentally safe and organic product. And it's now registered material for use in organic agriculture as well. And if you take a look at the lid here, it says protects newly installed plants and trees, shields pruned and damaged surfaces, and as we just said, we grow cool plants. And I'm going to show you in this video how we're going to use this product to benefit your bare root fruit plantings. And Home Depot, we're here in Los Angeles, California, just received their inventory of bare root fruit trees mid-December, and we'll usually carry it all the way through February. If you're in colder parts of the country, it could extend all the way through March and April as well. Let's go inside and check these plants out. Follow me. So here we are, look at all these fruit trees. Check these out. Here we've got, what's really special are these ultra dwarf. This here is a pear tree, and it only grows to a maximum size of 5 to 8 feet tall. These are ideal for pots and containers. But something I do with all of my trees is I like to peel the plastic back and examine the graft. Then you can see that this here is the rootstock, and we're going to talk about the importance of your rootstock in a moment. And this here is the flavor of the fruit. So all of these will always be this kefir pear and nothing else. This is the grafted variety, so you're gonna have the exact flavor, quality, and size as the kefir pear. So let's check out these other fruit. We've got over here another ultra dwarf and an apple, and you can see that this too will only grow about, between 4 and 8 feet tall. And you can see this one here is another ultra dwarf weeping Santa Rosa plum. Check out that label so you can see it. And the great thing about this one is it comes down as a weeping, has a weeping pattern for its growth. And check out the graft again. This here being the rootstock, and this here controls the height of the tree, in addition to other benefits which we'll discuss. This here was the original rootstock. They cut it, grafted the flavor of the tree right here. Let me share a couple more examples. Check this out. Now we've got over here another ultra dwarf, again growing between 4 and 8 feet, and nectarine, the gold mine nectarine. These are both of the same variety, but check this out now. Get a little closer. I want you to see the root, the graft unions between these two. This here again is the desired fruit flavor on top of this rootstock. You can see that they pruned it right here, and the prune is exposed, and this is exposed wood to the elements, both all disease, bacteria, viruses, as well as wood-boring insects, and this is going to take years for it to heal. Compare that one to this over here. Again, this is the rootstock. You can see that the graft union is right here, indicated by this line. You can sometimes see a difference in the coloration between the rootstock as well as the scion wood, which is the desired grafted variety. You can see that the rootstock is now in the process of healing. The cambium tissues are now healing and closing this union, and within the next year or two this should ultimately close. This here is a healthy graft, and I would prefer this over what we just saw over here. So this would be my second choice, and again, this here would be my first choice. But another issue that I see with this as well, and it needs protection, is if you take a look at where this was pruned, you can see that there's some openings still in here. And this should actually be, in fact, coated, and a product such as Ivory Organics will actually protect it from the possible entry of pathogens as well as wood-boring insects from getting into the heart of the base of the tree. Let's look at a couple more examples. Follow me. So other bare root fruit trees that they have here, if you take a look, we've got some more apples, the Italian prune. Here's another graft. A lot of you viewers were asking in regards to how can you identify the graft union, and again you can see the graft union right here. There's a perfect line that goes all the way around it. This here is the scion wood, the desired flavor of the fruit. There's also a change in color between this wood pattern and this wood pattern. It's a different color of wood as well. So this is the root stock, this is the scion wood, and you can see that they've pruned the root stock to encourage the growth to go into the preferred flavor of the grafted variety. Something I don't like about this one is it looks like it's growing in a top-heavy fashion. This root stock and this upper part of the tree is a lot thicker and stronger and more vigorous than the root stock, and this could result in growing a pretty weak tree. You can see that the bottom half of the tree is pretty thin relative to the top part. So this would be another reason to avoid this one if you can actually find one where the base is a little bit larger than what's happening here. Let's look at a couple more examples before we conclude this part of it. Follow me. So what I have over here is a couple of plum varieties, and what I've noticed when I was examining these bags is some of these, when you take a look at the packaging, at the base of the packaging, the graft is not exposed. The graft is hidden within the bag. So in order for you to make your determination, you're gonna have to take off this metal tie that's at the top and examine the graft union. If you take a look at this one, you can actually see the graft union above it. And again, you can see there's actually some mildew and mold happening at the side of the graft, and this needs to be protected to ensure the maximum health of the plant. And in fact, as much of the plant should be coated with the Ivory Organics product to protect it not just from sunburn in the hotter spring and summer months, but also to protect it from sun scald during the winter, as well as insects and rodents that may gnaw at the tree. What I've done with these bags over here is I ended up opening them because, again, the graft union was below the tie. So I've removed the tie so you can actually see the graft union on this tree. And this here you can see is covered in all of this wood mulch to basically keep the root zone moist. And you can see over here, again, the graft union. It's not ideal that it be covered with this much moisture. Most growers would not be doing this, but I found a few packaging where this was underneath all these wood chips. And the other thing too, here on this one, I noticed as I opened it is that it has a wound that's running all the way down alongside of the tree. I don't know if you can notice it by this darker pattern that's right here. You can see that it's actually wounded as well. So I'm glad I actually opened it because I'm really gonna take one of these, if not two of these, home. But this here is a wound that runs several inches down the root part of the tree trunk. This might be above the root level, which we're going to discuss once we take these home. If I picked up an ultra-dwarf tree, that means we're talking about maximum height of 8 feet. If we get a semi-dwarf tree, we're talking about maximum height of 15 feet generally. But take a look at this example over here. I thought this was a great example to show that you can also pick up fruit trees that are 3-in-1s. This is an apple tree with 3 separate flavors of apple. You can see we can get a green apple and a red apple and a pink apple. Some of the varieties here, and when you take a look at the grafts, you can see that the graft unions are over here. If we can zoom in, you can see along the side of the wood, you can actually see the scar tissue alongside where the flavor of what is over here labeled as the Braeburn apple is grafted on top of this rootstock. We also have over here a Gala apple, and that was grafted. Hopefully you can identify the scar tissue from that graft as well. It's right in there. And then the third apple variety is up here. If you take a look in orange, and it says it's a Jana Gold apple, and the scar tissue on that one is right in here. So it's a 3-in-1 apple tree, but the problem with this label is that it doesn't tell you if it's a dwarf, a semi-dwarf, or a standard sized tree. So we don't know how big this is gonna get. And that's a problem with this particular grower. Anyways, I'm gonna pick up my plum trees and let's now get to planting them. Follow me. So here we are back at the home garden, and I came home with 2 varieties of plum. I got the Satsuma plum as well as the Santa Rosa plum, and the reason I brought it is my daughter was with me at Home Depot, and she was the one that was holding the camera as well at the time. So if it was had a little bit of movement, keep in mind it was a 7-year-old holding the camera at the time. But in regards to the fruit trees, she wanted a plum tree, so we brought a plum to our garden. She loves plum fruits more than any other variety of fruits, but as we saw in the video, it's, if you want to come in a little closer, you'll notice over here that on the Santa Rosa plum variety, I want to make sure that gets clear and focused. On the Santa Rosa plum variety, it says it's self-fertile, meaning one tree is all you need in order to enjoy the fruits. However, on the other plum tree that we picked up, which is the Satsuma plum tree, it says over here to pollinate it with the Santa Rosa or a beauty plum. And there's a lot of other varieties of plums that'll work, but this one requires a second plum variety, not another Satsuma, but another plum variety in order to cross-pollinate with its flowers to produce the fruits. So again, just to repeat, Santa Rosa plums, self-pollinating. However, even though it'll produce fruit on its own, by having a second variety as well to cross-pollinate with those flowers will generate stronger and better seeds. More fruits will actually hold and result in higher yields with a second tree to cross-pollinate with those flowers. So it's important to introduce a lot of other varieties of plums if your goal is to grow an orchard of plums within your garden, if that's the fruit that you love the most, whether they be peaches, apricot, nectarines, or so on and so forth, even nuts, the almonds. But by having other fruit trees that are related within the garden is of more value to increasing the yields and having a successful garden than having more of the same. Planting multiple varieties of the Satsuma plum, which requires cross-pollinating, it may benefit from other plums within the neighborhood. If a bee visits that plum tree and brings that pollen to my garden, I will have some fruit on my plant. But by having a variety of different plums within the garden, those will all cross-pollinate with each other and benefit one another. Another question I've got from a lot of viewers is in regards to location. Do I need to plant the trees next to each other, and how close do they need to be to one another? So most growers would say as long as the trees are within 100 feet of one another, they'll benefit from cross-pollinating each other. So 100 feet, my garden spans from one wall to the other wall about 60 to maybe 80 feet. So if I put one tree in the furthest corner of my property and another tree at the other furthest corner, that would be enough space for the two trees to benefit entirely from cross-pollination via wind, and secondly from the traveling bees that'll pollinate the trees on one side and then visit the flowers on the other side of my garden and pollinate those flowers, and vice versa. Those bees on this tree will go and visit the other tree in the corner, and they'll both benefit. However, space is limited in my garden. What I'm going to do is actually put the two trees in the same hole, and I'm going to share with you how that concept's going to work. But your gain is only going to be as if there was only one tree. By putting the two trees in the same hole, you're going to have these two trees competing with sunlight. So you've got to grow the two plants independent of one another and make sure they both maximize in the amount of light that they can receive for that area. But do not expect to gain the benefit of having two separately planted trees with the space that each tree deserves, which is generally anywhere from as little as, if it was a dwarf, one of those ultra dwarf trees, you can plant them maybe as close as 5 and 6 feet apart. But for a semi-dwarf plant, generally you're going to want to space them at least 10 to 15 feet, and for a standard tree, anywhere from about 20 to 25 and maybe even 30 feet apart. So here we are with these trees. The first thing we're going to do is open them. And when we take a look at the package, and this was another thing I shared with my daughter in the car, was we're discussing, the fact that we're going to be buying these bare root fruit trees, and I'm like, Isabel, what do you think bare root means? And she's like, it sounds like barefoot. And I'm like, what is a barefoot? She's like, it's a foot with no socks and no shoes. I'm like, exactly. And these trees are considered bare root fruit trees because they have no soil around them. And we're going to check that out in just a minute here. So we're going to remove the tie on it here. It's got a metal band. We're going to twist that off. And take a look at what we've got here. So we're going to pull this out of the bag and take a look at the contents over here real quick. You can see that it's just full of these wood chips, and these wood chips have been damp before being in here, so you can see the moisture against the bark over here. So it's been keeping the root ball moist. So one of them that we saw at Home Depot was below the bag level. You never want to have the graft covered, as this is going to contribute to rot, mildew, and disease at the graft union, which is pretty susceptible to those issues. So you never want to have that covered with the packaging material. And now let's try to pull this plant out of the packaging material. And here we are. And take a look at all of those wood chips. We're going to shake that all off. And then we're just going to put the plant in a 5-gallon bucket here. We've got it full of water. Before we put it in, I've got these two products I want to share with you as well. The first one here is a vitamin B1, and more research than not says vitamin B1 does nothing to benefit the plant. You can do your own research and put some links down below if you see anything that says B1 is beneficial for your plants. But there's other things in this product as well, such as iron, manganese, zinc, some micronutrients. So there's some beneficial stuff in here. So it says per gallon to put, it says to put about a tablespoon per gallon. Make sure you read the directions for the product you purchase. I'm just gonna put about a tablespoon and maybe two. So I'm only putting about half as much as what they would recommend. So, and then another product I found in my garage was this here as well, which is Super Thrive. And again, the active ingredients in here, I don't know if you can zoom in, but you can see that it's got some nitrogen over here, and we're just talking about 0.5% of nitrogen. And then over here it says active ingredients, vitamin B1. So it's more vitamin B1 as well, which again, most research says not necessary, but I'm just gonna put a couple drops of this in here as well. So we'll just, and that's it. We'll set that down. And then we're just gonna put our tree in here and take a look at those beautiful roots that we've got here. But take a look here at the damage as well. This root over here is split within the packaging when they forced it in. So this here is the root ball. And we're just going to soak that in here. And the packaging recommends that you soak it for at least 2 hours. There's other research that says to soak it in for as long as, so the packaging says 2 hours, other research says 15 to 30 minutes, and a lot of growers, the majority of them, recommend to soak it overnight. So we're talking about 24 hours of soaking, the idea being that it draws in as much water as it can into the plant. It was in this packaging with maybe some moisture, and it probably dried out over time. So again, the range is anywhere from 30 minutes to 24 hours. I would recommend that when you buy your plant to soak it overnight, as most of the research says, and then go into and prepare your hole maybe that day, but don't do your planting until the following day after it's, again, soaked for at least 24 hours. Another point I want to make while we've still got this one here in the packaging is if you've just picked up your tree from the nursery and you're going to store your plant for a few more days, a few more weeks before you plant it, as again, this tree is going to remain dormant. There's none of these buds have gone into, none of these buds are showing any greenness. It's not swelling. There's no growth happening, and there probably won't be growth for a few more weeks. If you're going to wait until a warmer time in your season, being the last chance of frost, we're here in Los Angeles and we're now at the beginning of January, but our last chance of a frost date is at the end of January, and a lot of the trees will begin to start growing by mid-February and mid-March. So if I were to wait till the end of January and early February, I can plant the plant and expect it within a matter of a few weeks to start growing and benefiting from all the nutrients I'm going to put in the soil. But again, just for the sake of this video, I'm going to go through all the steps and race through it so that you can see all of the points and the tips that I want to make. So if you've just picked up your plant again, and take a look, I just told you about the mistake, and this is one that was a mistake in the packaging. The graft is below the packaging, and it's in this material of wood chips. So this was a faulty packaging. The graft should not be below the package tie. So it's getting too much moisture and dampness and potentially rotting. So this is not an ideal situation, but of all the trees that were available that were of the Satsuma variety, this was the best one I saw, and hence I picked it up. Again, for storage, this is what I'd recommend doing. Let me get my tools. So if you've just purchased your tree and your goal is to save it again for a few days or a few weeks, what I'd recommend, and the first thing to do, and this is actually one of my concerns, sometimes these plants are stored when you bought them from the nursery outdoors and it's been raining every day, and the rain's collecting at this point over here at the top of the bag, and the water's just running. Hopefully you can zoom in and see the water. It's just running into the bag, and the plant's taking all of it. None of this is going down to the ground. And I didn't do this before the video, but what I would recommend is the first thing you do is to poke a few holes at the bottom. So I'm just puncturing a few holes. Was added, you can see that there's moisture coming out of the bottom of it. So anything that was, so the goal is you're not gonna want the water to be trapped in here. You're gonna want to get as much of it as you can out. The goal is to keep the contents moist, but you don't want it to be drowning in water, as that will contribute to rot and disease and ultimately suffocate the plant. The roots also need to breathe just as the upper part of the plant. And that's an important concept that a lot of people don't understand, is that the plants in the ground have roots that do not like being drowned. They don't like being submerged underwater, other than the brief time once you're soaking the plant. But immediately thereafter, it needs air and it needs oxygen just as the rest of the plant would. So what we did first is poke as many holes near the bottom, and then the other thing is to then just store it in a shady place in your garden. And for me, it's this part of my wall is the north wall, and I can just go and lean it like so. And it's out of the sun. The sunniest part of my garden is behind you. This is the shadiest side of my garden, so I can just leave the tree and know that the sun won't be drying out the plant or forcing the plant to grow prematurely. But because we're going to be planting the tree today, we're going to take this out of the packaging as well. And here we go. We'll shake that. All those wood chips off. And again, let's check out the root ball and take a look at what these growers did. You can see how they pruned the root over here. Not such a good prune. I usually, when I like pruning my branches, and the same would apply for the roots, you're going to want to prune it. You're going to want to prune it flush with the rest of the tree. So we're just going to cut that off like so. The growers obviously went a little fast. Check this out as well. And this is going to be an issue in the future with suckers. You can see that there's some little baby suckers that are growing. The conditions within the packaging was warm enough that it started growing down below. But this is from the grafted root stock. So it's not going to produce the Satsuma plums that was grafted on top of the rootstock. And we're going to talk about the benefits of the rootstocks in just a second. I want to first clean this up. So with these suckers, while we're here, let's just take them off, and you can just rub them right off with your thumb. Those are all gone. And then with this pruned root as well, we're going to cut that off flush. This root over here, it's got some little smaller roots coming off of it, so we'll keep that alone. And if we see any other damage in here, which I do over here, you can see that the root's been split and doesn't appear to be as healthy. I'm going to cut that off right there. And just going to take another peek down here. I see another root that I can fix as well right there. That's going to come out. And take a look one more time at the graft union now. So this here is the rootstock from this point down. And then the Satsuma plum was grafted on the rootstock and is now controlling the flavor of what we want to enjoy in the garden. What the rootstock is benefiting is it's controlling the size of the plant. If we graft it onto an ultra dwarf variety of rootstock, then we're going to end up with a Satsuma plum. And again, we're talking about the same size fruit, the same tasting fruit, the same quality of fruit, and the same yielding fruit by grafting it onto an ultra dwarf, the same as if it would be on a semi-dwarf, and the same as if it were grafted on a standard size tree. The difference being, obviously, is the rootstock is going to control the size of the tree. What the rootstock will also control, and another question I got from a lot of people in the last few months have been in regards to rootstocks and how close can I plant them to my house. And again, if you're going to do a standard tree, I would say keep as much distance as possible, at least 6 to 8 to 10 feet away. The further the better for a standard size tree. But for a semi-dwarf, and especially for a dwarf tree, you can be just a few feet away, as the root system is not as vigorous and it's not going to be as damaging or as much of a risk to your foundation as a standard size tree. So these are all important considerations when picking up your tree, is to know what is the ultimate size of your plant going to be. And that's all controlled by the rootstock. Other benefits of your rootstock is your growers in the areas know what your soil type is. And this variety of rootstock, whatever it is, and I don't know, is again, the Home Depot typically doesn't label their plants as well as if you bought it up, picked it up from a nursery specialist that would tell you exactly what the rootstock is and what the scion wood is, or the flavor of the plant. And by understanding both, you can do your research and know exactly what your tree is going to mature and grow into. But this was not labeled, this was not described. I can probably contact the grower and do some further research on that. So benefits of the rootstock, aside from controlling size, is they know your soil condition, they know your weather condition, they know what your highs and your lows are. They know that they can tolerate the heat better. They know they can handle the frost better. Other issues are nematodes. There's a lot of beneficial nematodes in the soil, but there's some pest nematodes as well that can also destroy and contribute to root rot and disease. So a lot of factors and a lot of benefits that can be gained from your rootstock that otherwise would not happen if you were to just take a cutting or an air layering off of this plant and plant that by itself in the soil. Let's go and begin to soak this plant as well alongside this tree. And there we go. We've got those two plants now soaking in the water. I'm going to leave these for at least the next couple of hours. In the meantime, I'm going to prepare the hole. So follow me. Check this out.
Hit pause.
So when it comes to preparing the hole, I just went at the soil with a couple of hits here with my shovel, and I just want to share with you some of the life that's here in the soil, which is an important consideration in preparing it. Check this out over here. Hoping you can capture these worms. Look at that. I think there's 3 of them here that I was able to grab that are right there in the soil. But it's not just worms that are in the soil. There's fungus, there's beneficial bacteria, there's nematodes, and of course there's the earthworms that we just saw. There's a lot of life in here, and that's an important consideration when preparing a hole. I'm going to explain to you why in just a second. But first, I'm going to dig the hole enough to get those roots in there. So we're only talking about a couple of feet deep by a couple of feet wide, and I might have to go an extra foot because I'm going to be fitting 2 trees within this limited space. So let me start preparing the hole. And cut. So once you've got the right size and the right depth, I'm just going to take that last shovelful out. And the next thing we're going to do is improve the soil with some compost. And this here I picked up is a product made by Kellogg's, Grow Mulch. And you can see it's an organic product as well. But I've also made my own Grow Mulch in the corner of my garden. But most growers will pick up a bag. I'm just adding, the idea is whatever volume of soil you've just removed, you need to add the same exact volume of compost to the hole. And the goal is you're going to mix the native soil with the compost and then mix those two together. Once that's been added, we're just going to mix those two together. And then add that to the native soil that you've pulled out as well. The next step is to enrich the soil. We've just added some compost, and what the compost is going to do, it's going to continuously break down over the next several months and even over the course of a year. As within the compost, I can see that there's, let me zoom in so you can actually see some of the particles, but it's, you know, a product that's made out of leaves, and you can see that there's some wood chips in here, but all of this is going to gradually break down, and all of those white things that you see in there are actually part of the mycorrhizal roots, or hyphae, which are also beneficial to the soil as well. So we're mixing all of that in there, and then we're gonna add another product. And the two that I've got here is one being Miracle Grow, and the second being this product, again made by Kellogg's, it says Organic Plus. And I want you guys to keep this in mind. This Organic Plus material is made out of these following ingredients. Hoping you can zoom in a little closer. You can see that it's got bone meal in there, and poultry manure, and feathers, and kelp, and alfalfa, and a variety of organic sources. And what this product's gonna do is it's going to feed all of those beneficial things that are in the soil. It's gonna feed the earthworms, it's gonna feed the beneficial bacteria, it's gonna feed the fungal, the fungus that's in the, you know, the beneficial fungus in the soil. It's going to do all of these amazing things. In addition to, it's going to help warm the soil as well, as all of this life is going to warm the soil and encourage the plant to grow and develop deeper and healthier roots. On the contrary, a product such as this, and I'm not saying anything negative about Miracle Grow, because Miracle Grow also has an organic line, but adding a chemical fertilizer to your garden such as this, which is a glowing blue chemical product, does nothing to your soil biology. It will not feed the earthworms, it will not feed the beneficial bacteria, it will not benefit the beneficial fungus that's in your garden. It does nothing other than add elements to your soil that will benefit your plant, but does nothing for long-term sustainable gardening. So we're not going to be adding Miracle Grow, but to the contrary, we're going to be adding some organic fertilizer that's a balanced fertilizer with a lot of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, which are the three macronutrients, as well as a lot of micronutrients to the soil. And whatever the recommended amount is, I'm probably going to put half or even a third or even a fourth of what they recommend, as it's not going to do much in the winter as much as it's going to benefit the plant come spring, summer, and fall. And that's the reason that when it comes to fertilizing your plants, take a break in the winter. Don't do anything. Your plants are predominantly dormant, even if they're green, even if they're fruiting and flowering and doing whatever it's doing, it's not as active as they are spring, summer, and fall. So here we are with our organic fertilizer, and maybe you can see it better along this bed, because this is also going to be backfilled over the plant. You can see that I'm only enriching it just a little. I probably can add a couple of cups of this per tree come spring, summer, and fall. But again, being the winter, all I'm doing is encouraging all the life in the soil to continue proliferating and multiplying and getting ready for some beautiful spring, summer, and fall weather, where those numbers will explode and continue to enrich the soil and benefit these trees. And I'm now just going to mix that in a little bit more, as I will up here. And now let's go get our plants, assuming that they've soaked for at least 2 hours before planting. Let's get going. So now we've just inserted the 2 trees into the hole. I've got you a better view from up above now. And what I'm doing when positioning these 2 trees, and even though they're going to be that close and with the roots right on top of one another, just a few inches apart, but what I'm looking at is the primary branches that I'm going to want to keep. And you're going to see towards the end, we're still going to paint the plants with our Ivy Organics product, as well as we're going to prune the plant at least by 30% and possibly more. But what I'm looking at are, these are my 2 favorite branches, so I'm trying to make sure that they're equally balanced to basically create this half of the plant. And then I've got these branches over here, which again, I'm trying to make sure that these branches do not point towards the center, but instead are equally balanced away from the center of these 2 trees. And now that I've got them both balanced the way I want within the soil, I'm now going to take this improved native soil with the 50% compost with a few added with, you know, about a half a cup, maybe a quarter cup of organic fertilizer, and I'm just gonna backfill the soil like so. Before I finish this process, and if you can come a little closer, a very, very important tip is to identify where the graft union is and where that first root is coming off the plant. So before we stabilize these plants, now that there's enough soil, I can kind of manipulate them to get them in the right position. But here's the graft again. And again, if you can control this, you're gonna wanna position the graft union, which is actually on this side, away from the sun. So you're gonna wanna direct it in a position that's away from the sun and allow the sun to beat up this side of the plant, as sunburn is one of the issues, but it won't be an issue because we're gonna be coating it with the Ivory Organics product. But again, while we're positioning the plant, I can see that the first roots are here, and I'm only gonna wanna coat it by about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of soil. So this position's okay. By the time I finish the backfill, it'll be covered like so. But this part of the plant has to remain above the soil. And now let's take a look at the other graft. As you can take a look here, the graft is over here where my finger is, right there. And here's the graft union. And now we're gonna just try to find where that first root is coming up. And it looks like this one's a lot deeper, so we're gonna have to pull this one up a lot more than the other tree. So I'm gonna get that out a little more. And now begin to backfill around those roots to stabilize the tree. And now we can come back with a lot more soil. And you can see I'm going in with my fingers and I'm trying to remove any air pockets with the soil as well. And now we're gonna come with some more soil. And now we're just gonna examine the trees one more time and make sure that the roots are at the right level. So I'm coming down one more time. And again, I'm just about a 1/2 inch below the soil level, which I'm comfortable with. And the same thing on this side as well. I can feel those roots are right here starting. So we'll just cover that up. And both the grafts are above ground level. Now, if you back up, let's try to position the plants a little bit and see how we want them balanced. And I can see, I'm now just gonna strengthen that up. Press that down a little bit as well. And you can see that I've also got a mound around the plant, a circular mound to help capture the water when we irrigate the tree as well. And that should be it. What we're gonna do next is prune the tree. So now we're gonna look for first any deadwood within the plant. If you take a look over here, you might notice that this branch over here, you know, got damaged in handling. This one over here got mangled as well. If you come in, you can see that this branch has also been twisted. So let's first remove all of the dead branches. So we're just gonna go with our pruners and clean it up. This is not pruning yet. We're just removing any dead and mangled wood within the tree. So now, one issue that I see on this side, if you want to probably stand in this position, you can capture it a little bit better. So you can see over here, there's a concentration of branches coming out of this area. There's too many branches. What we're gonna do is have to select, and again, these are the major branches, these branch number 1, branch number 2. This third one that's coming out and actually branching into many more branches, we can actually just remove this entirely. The goal now is to remove at least 30% of the growth, and what that's gonna do is help balance the tree between the above ground as well as the below ground. As you saw, there was an extensive root system, but not quite enough to stabilize this entire tree. So by actually pruning it back, we're gonna remove all of the stress of handling and all that has been done with these trees over the last few months. And we're gonna make it a smaller plant with a much stronger base, with a good root system to help encourage a lot of growth going into this next season. By growing and performing really well this upcoming year, we're gonna get to enjoy a lot more fruits in the second year, which is what we're shooting for. We're not expecting much fruit, if any fruit, in this upcoming year, but for the second year, we expect a lot, and I'm hoping to share that with you soon. So here we go. Let's continue with the pruning. I'm gonna remove this branch back here now. So now I'm cutting back and working on designing my plum tree. And now we can actually even bring the height down. And now I'm looking at buds that are positioned away from the center of the tree. So I'm looking at buds that are on this side that I'm gonna wanna keep so that they continue growing away from the center. Then here's another bud that I found, again, on that side. And I'm pruning it just 1/4 of an inch above the bud. If you want to see an example, you can take a look right here. For example, on the stem, there's the bud, and I'm gonna cut 1/4 of an inch above it and at an angle so that if any water collects on this tip, it'll actually just wash right off and not collect at the top and contribute towards rot. And here we are, pretty much done. I'm gonna take this one more off as it's also pointed towards the center. And you can see I'm cutting it as flush as I can to the tree trunk so that as the plant expands, all of these wounds will be brought back into the center of the tree. And now let's do the same thing for the second plum tree. So here we are. We're now just trying to balance the height. So I like this branch, so I'm gonna keep it and prune it like so. I'm looking at buds that are now against this side, so to encourage more growth away from the center again. So we're gonna prune here, and we're gonna prune there, and we're gonna prune here. And now we've created a very stable and healthy looking plant. The next step we're gonna do now is thoroughly water the plant. We're gonna wanna make sure we get rid of as many more air pockets as we can, and once you water it, it's gonna be a lot easier to do. So I've got my bucket here, which is the same bucket we used for soaking the trees, as it's got a lot of the ingredients that we added to it to help with the shock and transplant and some nitrogen to help with the growth. And we're just going to water and soak the plant as much as we can. It's, again, this is its first day in the ground. And we'll take the rest of our bucket and just water that down. As the water is settling, it's a good idea to come back in with your hands and try to see if you can find any more air pockets that could be filled in. And again, the goal is not to compress the soil and compact it so that the roots can't find their way through, but the goal is just to remove any air pockets by gently pushing on the soil around the roots and trying to fill those pockets in. Keep in mind, we know that there's a lot of earthworms in here. They're gonna be benefiting from all the compost and organic matter we added and adding further tunnels and further oxygenating this root ball. So I'm not concerned about a little compression here and there. And there we go. Our last step now is we're gonna coat this with the Ivory Organics product. And what Ivory Organics will do for your trees is, one, and it's important as these plants get more established, is it's going to prevent them from prematurely flowering in the spring. Pretty much no matter where you live in the country, there's always those weeks where they're just too warm, too soon, and your plants will flower. What Ivory Organics will do when we coat it is it's going to reflect the sun and keep the plants cooler until it truly gets a warmer spring weather that'll support the flowers and bring them to maturity. But a lot of farmers lose a lot of their crop due to premature flowering that is then followed by a frost that kills those flowers, and then those are the flowers for the year, so it also affects the ultimate crop for that year. Other things that the Ivory Organics product will do for you, and let me bring the can here, is that it will protect against sunburn as well. So if there's a lot of sun, this product will help protect the bark from burning. You can research this as this is a phenomenon that affects a lot of plants, especially citrus and avocados, but a lot of these trees also suffer as well. Another issue being wintertime is rodents, and rodents love gnawing at the base of the trees and trying to get the sugars out of the plants. So by coating the base of the plant, you're also going to be protecting your plant as the product has castor oil, and what castor oil will make the plant taste bad and keep the rodents from gnawing on a tree and causing what's called girdling of the tree, and that too can shorten and affect the health and the life of your fruit trees. Another issue I want to share with you, and a lot of you viewers have shared a phenomenon called saposis, and it's an issue where the plant will leak and ooze sap, and it's typically caused by a fungal invasion as well as beetles getting in and they're damaging the interior of the plant, and the plant's trying to respond by bleeding or otherwise leaking these saps to try to push these insects and diseases out of it. This product again will help basically trap and smother what's in it, and also prevent other insects from invading those tunnels as well that are created by these insects. So a lot of benefits, and the list continues. You can do your research on that as well. What we're gonna do now is basically coat as much of this tree as possible now with the Ivory Organics product. Let's get started. It's also very important to coat the graft. As you saw, this was the wood that was exposed, and that would be a perfect entryway for, again, the wood-boring insects, pathogens, and disease. So the graft unit is coated. Now we're just gonna go up all the way up the tree. We're also gonna coat and cover all of the exposed ends as well. I'm not gonna fast forward. I'm gonna finish this up real quick and then we're gonna conclude the video. So I'll join you guys in just a few more minutes. Let me just finish this up here. So we've just coated the entire plant and all of the prune tips with the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard product. Keep in mind, a lot of growers talk about various products, and one of the primary products that are considered are latex-based paints that are diluted with water. Another one being is tar. What both of those issues are with those products, being the latex as well as tar-based products, is that they have a half-life that goes out into decades. They don't break down easily, and they also contribute to mildew and rot within the plant. If I were to coat the pruned areas, and if I were to coat the graft unions with latex paint or tar, the risk is you're trapping moisture within the plant, and this product does not do that. And additionally, being organic, we're dealing with something that's safer for the garden, safer for the soil biology, and ultimately safer for your family. So as you can see with the double plum planting that we just did, we used the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard Color White, but it's also available in 3 other colors. It comes also available in color brown if you're looking for something more natural, as well as color green. Depending on the type of plant, you might want the plant to be coated in green. But the 3 colors are available. Something else the color white can do for your plant is you can also use it as a foliar spray, which will help get your plants through the hottest days of summer. And it's also ideal when transplanting your leafy plants, whether they're oranges, grapefruits, or even your springtime plantings of your plum trees and apricots and whatever the type of plant, even your ornamental plants. By applying the product as a foliar spray at the time of transplant, you're also going to minimize the amount of transpiration from the leaves. You're going to minimize the amount of water loss, and that'll help reduce the amount of stress, both heat stress as well as water loss from the plant. So an important consideration when using the product as a foliar spray as well. I know the list goes on and on in regards to the benefits of the product. Do your research. If you have any questions, please write them down in the comments below, and check out the growth of this plum over the course of the season by subscribing down below. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, and again, don't forget to subscribe down below to be connected to all the other educational videos by Ivory Organics. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening.